coaches. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, they can't hold a flame against you, ay. Blow the whistle, blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, got the game, it ain't no issue, yeah. Blowing the whistle, I had enough with you, the championship, it is gone. Ain't listen to you, I can't get.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome into the Fantasy Coaches Podcast, guys. I am your host, as always, Coach Steve, guys. We have another fantastic episode for you guys today. We are talking tight end. We are previewing the tight end position in our positional JLI that we're going through right now. So it's the tight end time. Maybe not the most exciting group of players to talk about today, but they can be a difference maker for your fantasy team this year. Of course, we have Coach Steven 2 with us today. What's going on, Coach Steve?
That was smooth. Yeah, that's the name. Steve 2, Steven 2. It just reminds me of like Austin Powers, right?
Austin Powers, yeah.
Like number 2, right?
Oh, number 2, yeah.
Everyone needs a good number 2. So I'm that guy. No Tyler this week. He's probably playing some college football. 25. I don't blame him.
Yes.
But so we'll carry the load for this week.
Absolutely. And hopefully we have him back for next week for our wide receiver preview. So until then, guys, news-wise, let's talk about that. Again, Cam Akers signed with the Texans yesterday, if I'm not mistaken there. Again, I mean, I don't know about you, Steve, but like, I don't, it's just a body to have at camp. Maybe he, makes the roster, maybe he doesn't.
Yeah.
Don't put much into it. I've seen a lot of like channels talk about it was Cam Akers buying low. It's like no.
Yeah. No. And it's tough too. Like you want to kind of believe, and at this time of year, there's not really a lot of interesting ads on your dynasty roster. So you're like, oh, well, maybe with Cam Akers. I'll tell you, on limited space on the roster, I have Darren Waller that I'm just hanging around just in case he like unretires, and I have Ty Johnson. And I don't even want to drop those two right now for Cam Akers. I'm like, nah, I'll just ride with what I got with those guys.
Yeah, that's fair. That's exactly how I would kind of handle it too. Anything else happen? Training camp started. That's great. We'll see. There's a lot of people on the pump or the non-injured football list. Don't a lot of that don't take into too much consideration yet. These things can be switched very quickly, and if you see them as that on your fantasy teams, more than likely it's probably going to switch in the next few days or the next week or two. So don't panic about that. I think next Friday is the Hall of Fame game, if I'm not mistaken. So
I think it's important not to freak out about the PUP list for the training camp, but you can be excited for the people that missed out on the PUP list.
Yes, that is exciting. Like
Greg Dulcich, who we could talk about later. He's healthy, and he was like a for sure PUP to me that I looked at that like, oh, wow. I think that with that news, his ADP alone should like go up a couple rounds.
Yeah. Dulcich, I'm trying to think of other people. J.K. Dobbins, I don't think was on the pump. Daniel Jones, little guys, Joe Burrow is ready to go, healthy for the season here. So some players like that, Steve, that's a great example of how to think about the pump list right now. So, but hopefully we will have more news in the next coming weeks on some players and training camp things, and we will kind of break it all down as we go through this next month, because before you know it, August will be here and things are going to be insane then. So let's get to our tight end preview for 2024 here, starting with the early round tight ends. This is rounds 1 to 3. And this is kind of what the landscape of the tight end position is right now. It's two guys. It's Sam Laporta and Travis Kelce. They both go. I don't think obviously none of them are going in round 1. I believe Laporta's in round 2 and Kelsey's in round 3, if I remember correctly here. But
yep.
Steve, are they worth the price in the first few rounds? Laporta had a great season last year, but in terms of the tight ends over the last few years, it wasn't that great of a season for the top tight end. And Travis Kelce, had a down year, great in the playoffs last year. Is he still worth it to round 3? Are these guys worth it for you?
I'm usually not drafting these guys. Like most of my redraft leagues, I'm not going to go after either Laporta or Kelce. I will say of the two, I like Kelce at his ADP. You're getting him at a discount if you want to look at it like that. And when I look at Laporta, the one thing that just scares me off of him is the potential of the touchdown regression, right? That's the big thing. If he gets, 10 touchdowns again, he could easily be the tight end 1 again. But if it comes back down to like 6, then you're looking at, oh, well, actually, he's the tight end 3 or 4. And then you just paid way too much. But with Kelsey, 3 straight years, we had 12 touchdowns, 9 touchdowns, 11 touchdowns, and then last year 5. That's the one stat of his that I feel like could maybe just come back and he gets 8 or 9. And all of a sudden, Kelsey is, in standard leagues better than Laporta. So it could happen very easily like that. I would take the discount on Kelsey between the two.
Yeah, I'm kind of on par there with you. I love Sam Laporta. Love him in Dynasty right now. It's a great play to have him, obviously, as a long-term option. But again, he's going, I feel like, at his ceiling. I mean, people were drafting Kelsey with that upside, but there was more to that ceiling that you couldn't really get any higher than what you were already drafting. I just don't see Sam Laporta being that type of player as of right now. He's still young. He'll probably get there. But being like a 1,200 yard tight end with 10 plus touchdowns this season. Now, could it happen? Absolutely. But the likelihood is likely not going to happen. You have an Amon St. Brown there taking up targets this season. You have a dynamic duo with the Lions backfield there, and you have Jameson Williams hoping to make a rise on that roster there. I just don't see Laporta really taking that step to where you're drafting him and he has to be elite. And that's for me at that value doesn't make a lot of sense to take him that early.
I think, and he will be elite, right? Like he is an elite tight end. He is, but can he be just the tight end 1? And the percentages of it are that he won't be. And so if he's not, like I said, even if he is the 3, you might feel like you didn't get the best value where some of these guys might finish ahead of him that you could have waited maybe a round or 2 later. So in standard leagues, you can wait a whole round for Kelsey. And then, a lot of people love Trey McBride to be maybe their tight end 1, who we're going to talk about. I mean, so it really just, when you look at it like that, that's where it's tough to pull the trigger on Laporta.
Yeah, no, that 100% makes sense there. Yeah, I like Kelsey in round 3. I think the upside is still there for him to be still to be the top tight end after the 2024 season is over. There's still that upside there for him. Yeah, as long as he's able to stay healthy, that's a key factor. But you're getting him around later than Sam Laporta in an offense that still features him. He is the feature guy in this offense. I don't care who's there now with Worthy and Rice. Like, this is still Mahomes and Kelsey. So ride with that in round 3 over round 2. Again, the price tag worth it. Again, it's fine if you like to take tight ends or to have that security. But again, I think there's guys in the next round we're going to talk about in a second that might be worth waiting a little bit and allowing these guys to go somewhere else, and you could fill other positions like running back, wide receiver at that time frame. So, and the next tier we have here is the mid-range tight ends. We have the round 4 guys and the Trey McBride and Mark Andrews, and the round 5, 6 guys: Dalton Kincaid, Kyle Pitts, Evan Ingram, George Kittle. Steve, how do you feel about this tier? Is this possibly the tier where you're actually finding the number 1 tight end overall in fantasy this year?
Yeah, I like this tier a lot. I usually, in underdog drafts, I end up with one of these guys, but a lot of times I just punt the position. That's just how I draft. But I think your best value in the draft is going to be one of these players. I'm curious to hear your favorite of these guys. Mine, for even the end of last year, early offseason this year, has been Dalton Kincaid. I do believe he is the number 1 target leader for the Buffalo Bills this year. But I'm coming around on Kyle Pitts. It doesn't feel great. And I think that Kincaid is your best bet to be more consistent and potentially finish higher in PPR. I think that would be like the safer bet. But man, Kirk Cousins, he really loves tight ends throughout his career. I mean, we're talking about Jordan Reed, 2015. He was, in points per game in PPR leagues, he was the tight end 1 over Rob Gronkowski. Most, stats will say, oh, he was the tight end 2 that year. But really, in points per game in PPR, he actually was the tight end 1. Then you're talking about TJ Hawkinson. We know what he did. And even guys like Tyler Conklin. We like Tyler Conklin in Minnesota. Why did we like him? Well, because Kirk Cousins. Yeah. Randomly, Tyler Conklin had three straight years of 87 targets now. It's very strange.
Crazy. Great stat.
That's crazy. It reminds me of Alvin Kamara when he caught 80 balls 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
So now, we're going into the year. We love Drake London, and Kyle Pitts actually is the best value of these guys. He goes like a full round after Kincaid. So the same reason I'm going to take Pitts on that cheaper option. I think that he really can have like his best year. Last year was just so weird for Pitts. I mean, we've had 2 straight weird years, but last year, now we had Jonnu Smith come into the equation.
Oh, yeah. Horrible situation.
Kyle Pitts had 5 red zone targets last year. He had 3 red targets inside the 10-yard line. Adam Troutman had 9 of those. Like he had the same amount of targets inside the 10 as Tommy Tremble, who is barely like on dynasty rosters right now. I don't know what, I think Art Smith, he's gone. I think we can, we have the sigh of relief now with Drake London. I think we can look at Kyle Pitts with that same lens now.
Yeah, no, I get that. And I think Kincaid and Pitts are great values in rounds 5 and 6 that have potential to be the tight end 1 this year. I mean, Kincaid's path is pretty simple. There's not a lot of elite wide receivers or experienced wide receivers on this roster to really stand above the pack here, allowing Dalton Kincaid to be the next Travis Kelce and be that tight end that is getting 100 targets in the season here, 100-yard games here and there, and being an elite difference maker in a Bills offense that is going to need weapons to step up. And Kyle Pitts, same thing, Again, I am a little more hesitant with Kyle Pitts because, I'm a little concerned about, the injuries of Kirk Cousins, and hopefully he bounces back. That's for me, that's going to be a key thing here. The way they want to use Bijan Robinson this year, they're going to run the ball a ton, even though we did that last year. But this offense is different. Like I want to see what this offense comes from because Kyle Pitts has the upside. We haven't seen it with a quarterback yet. So we have to assume with a good quarterback and Kyle Pitts and his athletic abilities, like it's a match made in heaven, but we haven't seen it yet. We've seen glimpses of Kincaid already with Josh Allen that I think I feel more comfortable doing. Yeah. But for me, my tight end I like Mark Andrews again. I think a lot of people are sleeping on Mark Andrews after he was hurt half the season last year. But through the first 9 weeks, he was tied for the tight end 1. Yeah. Like him and Travis Kelce were the tight end 1s combined the first 9 weeks of the season here. And we talked about this Ravens offense that they're continuing to develop a passing game here. Lamar Jackson is going to be throwing the ball more. They're hyping up Rashad Bateman for some reason consistently. Yeah. Like they're talking about this passing game with, yes, they have Derrick Henry now, but they need to finish to throw the ball. And outside of a guy who's never done anything yet and a young player in Zay Flowers, they don't really have a lot of options in the passing game. Right. So Mark Andrews is going to continue to be the focal point of this offense here. And he was fantastic last year until he got hurt. It just, things didn't work out his way there. So, in round 4, I like Mark Andrews to be able to bounce back. He's a guy that we were taking 2 years ago in the first 2 rounds of drafts, the first 3 rounds, whatever. Like, it's a good value right now still. All right. So what about guys like Evan Ingram? Let's just talk about all these guys here. Evan Ingram, George Kittle, these guys are obviously older players, both over the age of 28 at this point. I think Kittle's already 30 this year. Do you feel like those still are safe options for you in fantasy? Because you've seen what they've been able to do over to some of these guys like Pitts, Kincaid, and partly McBride. Like Ingram's done it the last 2 years. Kittle's been a great top 5 tight ends. Is it better to go with one of these guys?
I think that Ingram can definitely outproduce Pitts and then maybe just be like a Kincaid light or even just have a similar production. Based on what Ingram did last year, he probably should be drafted a little bit higher. He ends up falling to a good spot a lot of times. So if you want to take him there, I think maybe I'm a little burnt out on Evan Ingram just as like the name. Last year, he really was elite in terms of his production. He had some big games for you. So I really think, especially with the turnover at the wide receiver position with Calvin Ridley gone, Calvin Ridley had a lot of red zone targets last year. Maybe some of those filtered to Ingram. So I think that Ingram is somebody who is dropping or at a point in the draft where he really shouldn't be. He could be drafted a little bit higher.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Like the 143 targets is like, wow, that's amazing there. But are they going to keep that target share to him this year? Well, what I really want to see is what Christian Kirk does this year. Having Christian Kirk back for a full season, I want to see how this offense kind of changes. If they use Christian Kirk back in the slot more, or if they put him out wide as kind of that short area guy. As we know that they have Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas Jr. to kind of go deep for this offense here. I want to see who they use in this offense as the short guy, because is it going to be Ingram again, or are they going to kind of go back to Christian Kirk like they did 2 years ago? So I'm a little hesitant. I see the upside, but definitely a little hesitant. I probably would rather just allow someone else to take him and then skip him out in round 6. George Kittle, for me, similar thing. Like he's safe. He's a safe guy to take there. I'm not concerned about George Kittle per se. It's just the injuries. Injuries have always been an issue for me with George Kittle over his years, and he's that. The fact that he's like, sometimes you're just not going to get an elite tight end. You're going to get a good elite NFL tight end, unfortunately. And that's just the way George Kittle works. You kind of have to take the good and the bad when it comes to that in fantasy. So
yeah, he gets schemed out of games, unfortunately, when it comes to the passing game. And, if you're okay with that, if you have if you're like, you know what, my roster is really great, and those weeks that he hits, no one's beating me. I mean, that's fine. Like for me, I don't like drafting Kittle. I don't like playing the game. I had him in Dynasty. I wanted to get him off my roster just because I think I can put somebody like an Njoku in that spot and get the consistency, still get ceiling games. So that's where I am with Kittle, where I'd rather wait a little bit on somebody else.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then the last guy in this round, because we haven't really mentioned him, is Trey McBride. Obviously, we know Trey McBride, big breakout season last year. Obviously, after Zach Ertz went down, he just went bananas the rest of the season here. So now he goes in round 4. How do you feel about Trey McBride, Steve, this year? Like, is he someone you're still targeting, or is there concern that he might not have the same kind of production that he had last year?
Yeah, I love Trey McBride as a player. I think that he is, he can dominate at the position. He's a target earner, and he's going to be. It wouldn't be the craziest thing if he was like the number 1 target this year on the Cardinals. If he actually outproduced Harrison in targets, it wouldn't be the craziest thing. I don't project it happening. I think that Harrison is going to be the number 1, and then McBride's going to be at that like 120 target area. It probably just comes down to touchdowns. He's going to get the volume. I think that you're going to be happy with the volume and the consistency you get with McBride. I just think that, somebody like Kincaid, I'm more interested in at ADP. That's really what it comes down to. I like McBride. I just don't see the world where it's like, it's so obvious that he finishes ahead of somebody like Kincaid, where I believe that there's still a chance that Kincaid could finish higher, or where they finish at the end of the year isn't going to matter as much. I'd rather get the value. So that's where I am. I really do love McBride. Last year, I was so happy to have him on all my rosters, like early on before, on the redraft streets where people don't really know who everybody is. As soon as Ertz went down, I was like, it's a wrap. I'm getting this guy. And I knew what I was getting. So now everybody knows, and that's what I don't like.
Yeah, no, unfortunately. So, like I said, I do like McBride. There was definitely an upside in his game when watching him this season here. I mean, he was the tight end 5 from week 6 on. Like he was great for fantasy football here. And I think there is an upside. There's definitely an upside because coming in the league, he was the number 1 tight end in this class. He had that receiving ability upside to be a difference maker, kind of like a Travis Kelce type of individual. But there's also, for me, the downside of this offense where I could see McBride finishing past basically all these people on this list here. Like, wow. Literally, like I could see it because for me, I don't trust Kyle Murray enough to have him be able to sustain 2 top, players in their own position consistently for an entire season here. Yeah. Everyone has Marvin Harrison as literally the wide receiver 7 on the year. And I don't expect that to be the case this season, but Marvin Harrison's going to round 2. Trey McBride's going in round 4. Like, I don't think I trust Kyler Murray to be able to get both these guys up there into that elite range.
I am with you. I think it's going a little too far in that direction. I still like drafting Harrison, especially like in like the Scotty Fish Bowl, right, with super flex tight ends. I
Yeah,
mean, he's dropped into like fourth round. You can get him as your wide receiver 2 or 3. That's pretty awesome. And I think that's where I love him, like at the back end of the second round. But he's not really going there in typical redraft leagues right now.
Yeah, no, I definitely get that. So like for me, it's just that this concern that McBride has a great upside play, and hopefully that this offense continues. Like, if something happens to Kyle Murray again, he's been hurt the last few years. Can Desmond Ridder sustain this offense? Like, I don't know. Can Klay Thompson sustain this offense? I really don't know if that is really going to be the case with McBride and Marvin Harrison. One of the two are going to eat, and it may not be both. It may be both, but it's less than likely it's not going to be both of them. It's going to be one or the other, where McBride could still have a decent season, but 81 receptions, it may be like 60 receptions. Maybe be 600 yards and 5 touchdowns. Like, there could be a drop where he has a solid season where he's still tight end at 7. It's just behind all these guys here who may have better upside in their offense. So, all right, over to the borderline tight end ones, and this is round 8 and 9. You have Jake Ferguson, David Njoku. Then you have that round 10 to 12: Brock Bowers, Dallas Goedert, Dalton Schultz, T.J. Hawkinson, and Pat Freiermuth. Basically, all guys who, if you miss out on tight ends, you don't want to take the top 7, top 8. This is what you're left with here, and these are the guys that are likely going to be the last players for a certain amount of teams here. So, Steve, is this a good value tier for you? Is there someone here you really like in these rounds you don't mind waiting on if you have to?
Yeah. I think that when I look at this tier, and usually I'm going at the back end of tiers, I would like to have like one of the last guys, unless I really feel strongly, and then I'm going to draft the guy ahead of ADP. And I'm not really getting that in this situation. With Ferguson and Njoku, I'm looking at 24 red zone targets from Jake Ferguson last year, led the tight end position, and then Njoku 20, tied with Kelsey. So heavily targeted in the red zone, that paid off to substantial touchdowns. Will that happen again? I'm questioning the touchdowns regression one more time with these tight ends. It's so important. So you really just want to bank on, like, what am I really banking on? Am I banking on touchdowns? That, with the tight end, it's okay to do that. You're saying, okay, if he scores, great. I might, have a better chance of winning. If not, I hope my team's strong. But I'm going to look more consistent. I'm going to look more at a good offense. And I'm finding that actually at the back of this tier with Dalton Schultz. And, I think that TJ Hawkinson is somebody who I'm like, all right, he could actually play most of the season. If you want to draft him and draft one of these other guys like Pat Freiermuth, I think that's a great strategy, and just wait on TJ. I think that's a great strategy this year, especially if you keep getting the ADP that Hawkinson is. But Schultz is probably on the best offense here. Philadelphia, obviously, but getting a piece of this Houston offense where, Schultz is just being kind of forgotten about, I'm okay with it as being like one of the last like consistent tight ends that you can just like plug and play and not worry about it.
Yeah, no, that's fair there. There's definitely some solid value here for potential, steady tight end. They might not be guys that consistently win you weeks, but they probably won't consistently lose you a week either, which is not a bad thing if you miss out on some of the top tight ends in this class here. So, like, for me, like, I'm with you, Steve. I like Jake Ferguson. Like, I think that might be a guy that in a lot of my home leagues this year that I kind of just wait on tight ends and target them. Like, what's one thing that Dak Prescott's always had? He's always had a pretty solid tight end for fantasy. Jason Witten, Dalton Schultz, like, he's had tight end ones over his career. And last year, Jake Ferguson kind of proved that point with a really good season last year. And, is he the number 2 target on this offense? Yeah, it's possible. Brandon Cooks, Jalen Tolbert, like, Zeke Elliott, they don't have a pass catching back that's that dominant right now. Like, Ferguson could literally see 100 targets this year in an offense where Dak's trying to prove himself as a top tier quarterback to make that money. Ferguson in round 8, it's good value. David Njoku, I'm a little more torn on. When you see the production from him, a good obviously portion came that with Joe Flacco. His production with Deshaun Watson wasn't as high as it was with obviously, Joe Flacco on the field. I mean, he had probably 1 or 2 games over 10 fantasy points with with Dalton Schultz not Dalton Schultz, Sean Watson. There you go, Steve. Flacco factor, yeah, facto factor, exactly. So, like, I'm out on David Njoku. I don't really. He's a solid player. I just don't see the upside that you're looking at when we saw near the guy who helped you win a fantasy playoff last year. Schultz is solid. I am concerned about the target share and how that's going to go down. Like, you're taking a slight risk that you're hopeful that maybe he ends up seeing the second targets in the offense. I think it could be anyone. That's the mystery about it. Like, anyone could be the target leader in this offense here. That's the one scary thing about Houston, is that we have no idea who is going to be there. But in round 11, I think he goes in. It's not bad because you signed him for a big contract. You're going to use your tight end one on this offense. About Hawkinson, I like Hawkinson. I think if you have an IR spot and he goes in the pump for 4 weeks or 3 weeks, whatever, like grab him in round 11 and put him on there, and find the tight end that has an easy matchup to start the season, or grab one of these guys in this round here. In
a month, Hawkinson's ADP could be way up from what it is now. So
it could be, yeah. So if you're drafting now, it's a great time to snag him, especially in like best ball maybe, and just hope that maybe you can survive with whoever your tight end one is for the first 6 to 7 weeks, and then you have Hawkinson hopefully for the rest of the season.
Real quick on Schultz, he's the 4th target on this offense, no doubt. But if we're drafting CJ Stroud as so highly, then if he has that year that he's being drafted as, then actually Schultz is going to be a value in drafts. And Jake Ferguson, like to your point, he did the 100 targets last year. He had 71 catches with those 24 red zone targets. He only had 5 touchdowns. Yeah. So you can look at Ferguson like, hey, he should actually have more touchdowns going into next year. 24 red zone targets, probably not going to get that. But even if it's 15 in that range, I still like his chances of exceeding that 5.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He had 5 in that week 1 game there. That was a bad to watch there. But the rest of the season, he was fantastic for fantasy. So, and again, the rest of the guys, like Dallas Goedert is only good if Devonta Smith isn't playing, and vice versa. Really, it's like either one of them are going to be good but one of them, they both can't be on the field together. Like Dallas Goedert for me is like, I wouldn't have him in this list. I'd probably just put him in the next tier because I just don't see any upside in this game.
The problem with Goddard that I was looking at is we know who he is.
Yeah.
Like he's like how I think of like Terry McLaurin now. Like we're still waiting on the thing that happened that really hasn't. And Dallas Goedert is like going into his like 8th season, I want to say, and we've just really gotten the same old stuff. So yeah, like it's not really a sexy pick for me where I want upside. Like I would rather wait on Freiermuth, who I think is going to outproduce Goddard pretty easily.
Yeah, and that's where I was getting at with. And actually, funny enough, I actually I've been kind of cold on a little bit on Pat Freiermuth as of lately here. I really do like Pat Freiermuth, and the Arthur Smith offense is supposedly supposed to favor tight ends this year. But my only concern is that he kind of does what he did last year with Jonas Smith, where they kind of use a guy like Darnell Washington a little bit more, or Casey Hayward.
I want to see Darnell Washington get targets, man.
Yeah, I mean that's my concerns with Pat Freiermuth. I've been kind of cooling on him as a sleeper tight end. I had him as a sleeper, I think maybe in last month, but the more and more research I've been doing, it's just I like Pat Freiermuth, but I'm concerned that there's going to be too many 2 tight end sets where it kind of favors Washington a little bit there. So
I still think Freiermuth is second in targets on this team.
Yeah, and absolutely. I absolutely expect that to kind of go in that direction for sure. What about Brock Bowers? The rookie tight end, Raiders offense. It's something. It's something that's for sure. So how do you feel about Brock Bowers and drafting him this year?
It's a tough sell, but at the same time, it's not going to really cost you much right now. So I don't think it's a bad pick. It's one I'm usually not making. At this point in the draft, again, like I'm going to wait on, I'd rather have Hawkinson. I'd rather do the Hawkinson thing and then start somebody else until I figure out, once we know, because I think in a month from now, we're going to know what Hawkinson's expected return is. And then you can feel more comfortable drafting him and then doing the plug and play approach until he's healthy. So I would just rather do something like that. I don't think that Bowers year 1 is going to be a top 5 tight end. You're drafting him at what, like the tight end 10?
Yeah, I'd say that's 10 or 11 right there, I think, in terms of tight end. Let me go back
Yeah,
here. It's
tight end
6,
11.
11, yeah. So he's tight end 11
That's
right
that's
there.
that's fair. You're not gonna be upset if he's just not it. The problem is, and we saw this last year with Kincaid, you really had to wait. If you had Kincaid on your roster, you weren't good. If you were starting him, you were losing potentially because you were getting like 3 points from your tight end, and we could see that from Bowers early on, and you're not going to know what to do with him.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it took an injury for Dalton Kincaid to really like step up. And another interesting, thing about this is just that, like, we don't know who's going to play quarterback. Is it Aiden O'Connell? Do you trust Aiden O'Connell to get multiple fantasy stars or fantasy relevant players this coming season? He did it last year, obviously, with Jacoby Brissett and Devontae Adams, but can he do it 3? Does Jacoby Myers fall off? Because I don't see Jacoby Myers falling off. I think Myers still can have a really good season. So that's, for me, that's concerning. Gardner Minshew, like, I don't think Gardner Minshew can make 3 players fantasy relevant. And Minshew, actually, looking back at it, like, he's really never given a fantasy relevant tight end in his career. Whether or not he had one or not, but he's never produced one for fantasy. So, like, not saying that's the same as Bowers, but like,
right.
He obviously isn't targeting the tight end. Like, Minshew, I can see him heavily targeting Devontae Adams like this season here, where everyone else kind of gets left in the dust with like 4 or 5 targets a game.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's going to take a little while. And yeah, Michael Mayer is still there.
Exactly. He's there too. People forget about him.
it shouldn't scare you off necessarily.
No.
He can be that Dawson Knox thorn in his side, like Dalton Kincaid last year, until we really get a clearer picture.
Yeah, exactly. So again, there's definitely some good value here if you want to wait on tight ends. So. And then last but not least, the sleeper tight end twos. Maybe if you're in a tight end premium league and you want to have 2 tight ends on your roster, it's sometimes not a terrible thing if that's the case in that sense. But you have around 13 plus. He's all around 13 plus. You have Cole Kmet, Taysom Hill, Luke Musgrave, Hunter Henry, Tyler Conklin, Cade Otton, Chigo Okonkwo, and Jonnu Smith here. So Steve, in this tier here, again, these are probably streaming tight ends, maybe, in a deeper league sense there. But is there anyone that has potential to kind of like make a name and maybe jump into that next tier here, 2024?
Oh man, I keep going back to Jonnu because of the offense. I don't know. I think it's not going to work. I think, look, if you've just waited on a tight end the whole time, you should feel like a bandit getting Hunter Henry at this point, because it's not like he's gonna like finish as a tight end 5 or higher, right? But you're drafting him at, what is he being drafted at now?
Hunter Henry is ADP
19, tight end 19. I mean, that just feels a little silly, because we have all this uncertainty with the wide receiver position. Hunter Henry's there. You can get just consistent little, not much volume, but still you're going to get touchdown potential every week. Jonnu Smith, though, I'm curious. He's coming off of pretty much a career year in terms of how he was used. I want to see how Michael McDaniel is going to use an actual tight end. They haven't had that in years there. You're getting the offense that produced the most passing yards last year. So,
right.
Yeah, I'm interested.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's definitely some interest there. Again, I'm not as high, even as a Dolphins fan, I'm not as high on Jonnu really making a major impact for fantasy. Like, appreciate the subscription, Fantasy Dog. Thank you so much. We got we're deaf good. Love that. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. For me, with Jonnu, is that, like, I just don't know if there's enough targets for him to be a fantasy relevant player. Like best ball, like, I think Jonnu has a potential to be great, but for redraft, like I probably would avoid that for most cases.
Right.
There's definitely one guy here I'm fairly intrigued with, and it's Tyler Conklin. We kind of already mentioned him on the show earlier, but like Tyler Conklin is someone who's, we already mentioned he has 87 targets in the last 3 seasons, over each of the last 3 seasons here. You have hopefully Aaron Rodgers coming back to some kind of form. Again, still scary, like the Kirk Cousins situation, but he's a little further off of that injury, which is better to have, obviously, for that situation. But last year, I mean, he had 600 yards. He's had 500 yards in 3 straight seasons. Last year, he had 0 touchdowns. I mean, you give him like 3 or 4 touchdowns last year, you're talking about a low-end tight end 1 in fantasy football. Like, I don't see where, outside of Garrett Wilson, anyone else can truly, steal enough targets away where Conklin can't be the second pass catcher on this offense. Like Mike Williams, yeah, he's older. Guy can get injured fairly quickly. Corley, the rookie, like we don't know what he's about yet and what his potential is in this offense, but it may also be nothing where it allows Tyler Conklin to see the more red zone targets. Last year, he had a good amount of red zone targets and just didn't fall his way. But he's got a good quarterback, so let's see if that's potentially there. Like, if I really want to just skip the tight end position completely, and then, again, probably not a 10 or 12-man league, but 14, 16, like, I'd be targeting Tyler Conklin. In my charity leagues, like, I've been targeting Tyler Conklin as much as possible.
Yep. No, it's a great call. And you're right. There's a real world where he's the second in targets on this team. And if Aaron Rodgers is back, then you're talking about someone who likes to target the tight end, especially in the red zone, which, right, exactly. That 0 touchdowns, that should go up to like 3 or 4 at least.
At least, yeah. At a minimum. So, I mean, we've seen Rodgers target his tight ends in the red zone back when he was with the Packers for many, many years. So, anyone else really on this list? I mean, Cole Kmet's fine. Taysom Hill's a quarterback tight end. We don't know what's going to go with that. Luke Musgrave could be interesting with Tucker Kraft out.
Yeah, I think I like Tucker Kraft better, actually. I was getting Tucker Kraft later. This guy actually had 8 red zone targets in the limited time he had. Jordan Love just uses them. It's like when you're getting down to the red zone, when you're Jordan Love, you're looking for Romeo Doubs, you're looking for Tucker Kraft. Obviously, Musgrave on the field, that does limit Kraft's upside. But what about Mike Gesicki? Any love on Mike Gesicki? Okay, so we're going to go into more 12 personnel, so he's going to be on the field more. So I look at him like, and we know he can't block. He's just going to be out there to catch the ball. They're going to do 12-man personnel so they can have a tight end blocking and 1 tight end running routes. Gesicki's going to be the one running routes. I don't know. I think that he could actually be like the 3rd in targets on this team when we're like really unclear at the running back position on who's going to like earn targets there between Moss and Chase Brown. I kind of like Gesicki as just like a sleeper. You can take him with like your last pick, and he might actually be utilized a little bit more than we think.
Yeah, no, it's definitely possible. I know in minicamp there was a lot of reports about him kind of being used in the slot like he usually is as a tight end, but kind of being that primary slot guy outside of pushing guy like Jermaine Burton kind of out a little bit more. Not having him on the field as much, allowing Mike Gesicki to kind of have that position while they probably put their blocking tight end Drew Sample like on the line more and go kind of 2 tight ends. So Fantasy Dog has another good one there. Jelani Woods, definitely another interesting one who I do like as well. Definitely in like deeper 16 dynasty leagues. I mean, he was a tight end coming out that was transitioning tight end who did well at Virginia Tech and again had some flashes his rookie year. Last year, he actually missed the entire season due to a hamstring injury. So he's another interesting one that I could see kind of making a jump in year 2, so year 3.
Yeah, love that call. I think he is a great pick at the end of best ball. I love doing that. Like if you have a build with Anthony Richardson, last pick on Woods, because, look, if he's just a touchdown guy, that's great in best ball. Just having a guy like that, like, oh, got that touchdown from Woods this week. They have a lot of tight ends there. That's just the only thing. Like they just have so many that they like to use. So that's why I'm just like a little bit off on that call. But like, if we knew, hey, they're going to use him as the tight end 1 and they're not going to use all these other guys, like I would be so in on Jelani Woods.
Yeah. Let's see what Fantasy Dog say. You guys do everything, best ball, redraft, etc. Just asking. So mostly we do a lot of dynasty. We do a lot of redraft. We mix in best ball. Now we have Steve on the show. He likes to bring up best ball a lot. So we like to mix a little bit of everything in here. So
yeah,
but yeah, I mean, again, this last tier tight ends, you're not going to draft them in more normal 10 to 12 man leagues more than likely. But if you get the 14, 16, these guys kind of become a little more value for you in fantasy. That's for sure. Again, they're probably not worth waiting on per se, but they could have some value this season and definitely could be. These are very good bye week replacement tight ends if you need a bye week filler guy. So, all right, Steve, is there anything else you want to mention? Today's show is a little quicker than we normally do because the tight end position, guys, is just it's the tight end position. After the first 7, it's it's anyone's call sometimes.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Ben Sinnott,
Ben Sinnott.
Sinnott. I think he's a name to know. Washington's offense, I think we've talked about him a lot on this show. I think they're going to be a little bit better than people anticipate. They're starting the season with Zach Ertz as their starter.
Zach Ertz ain't bad potentially for the early on.
That is not a bad call on, like, I'm talking about Gesicki, right? I mean, we know that Ertz, when he's on the field, is at least a target earner. So maybe to start your season, if you want to go Hockenson, put him on that IR. Week 1, you have Ertz. I think that's the way to go, because there's a shelf life on Ertz. He's going to last 5 weeks, maybe probably right around the time when Hockenson comes back. But as soon as Ertz goes down, Sinnott, I think, is going to have a nice end to the year.
Yeah, and Zach Ertz has played played with Kingsbury before, so there's that connection already for the offense. So and he had good seasons when he was with Kingsbury back in Arizona. So again, there's definitely options at tight ends here, but again, if you don't want to take that risk on trying to figure out which one of these guys are going to be the next breakout, there's nothing wrong with taking one of those top 7 because or top 8, whatever they were. They have upside potential to all be the tight end one this year. So. But, Steve, unless you have anything else to say, I think we're going to wrap today's show up.
Yeah, sounds good, man. Yeah, I'm excited to get the season started. Yeah, I think that around this time of year, we're kind of leaning more onto redraft, right? Because everyone's getting excited. I mean, season's really close, guys. I mean, we're like a month and a half away from actual football. So that's why the redraft, that's why the best ball, that's what's hot right now. But, I'm sure we'll be doing some dynasty-focused shows soon as well. So excited to get into that as well.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. And we appreciate you guys for all tuning in here. Fantasy Dog, man, we appreciate you joining in with us tonight. Loved all the comments. We appreciate that. We try to do the best we can here, guys. We're trying to help you guys win championships by giving you guys great information and advice to help you with your drafts, your lineups, and obviously we'll get the lineups and waiver wires in season here. But for right now, we're trying to give you guys as much detail as possible to give yourselves the best chance to win your draft. So again, we appreciate you guys for listening, whether it's live on our YouTube channel or if it's afterwards on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasts. We appreciate it. We'll be back next Monday, guys, talking wide receivers for 2024. We'll have a guest on. Hopefully Coach Tyler is back next week here. So we appreciate you guys all for tuning in. Tune in until next time, everyone, and have a good one.
Back to back is not far-fetched. We got a couple of Clark Kents. I've been feeling super duper. How the heck they know the future? Come with me, don't be a loser.